Welcome to the debate. Imagine you're driving a highly sophisticated sports car, right?
Okay.
The dashboard is completely lit up. You've got these green indicators everywhere. The diagnostic system is telling you the engine is running at the absolute, optimal temperature.
Right. Everything looks perfect.
Exactly. The tire pressure is perfect down to the PSI. The fuel mix is exact. Everything looks flawless. And here's the catch. As you turn the steering wheel to take a corner, the car just drifts aimlessly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't respond at all. The metrics are saying everything is perfectly fine, but the actual physical experience of driving is completely disconnected from reality.
And yet, the instinct for most corporate mechanics in that exact situation is to simply pull over and install 3 more sensors on the dashboard, right? Just hoping a new set of flashing lights will somehow miraculously reconnect the steering column.
Exactly. It's an illusion of control. And this is the paradox we are exploring today, drawn directly from Dr. Jonathan H. Westover's research on this massive paradigm shift happening in the workplace.
Yeah, the move from traditional employee engagement to people experience in the age of artificial intelligence.
Right. And the stakes here are truly enormous. When we look at the data from Gallup, organizations globally are pouring over $100 billion, billion with a B, annually into engagement initiatives.
Which is just a staggering amount of capital to throw at a problem that, frankly, doesn't seem to be getting solved. Despite that massive investment, we are seeing highly engaged employees still walking out the door.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're seeing hybrid workers reporting this profound systemic isolation, even as their inbox just fills up with endless automated pulse surveys checking in on how they feel.
Which brings us to the core tension of Dr. Westover's research and really our central question for today. Is the meticulous intentional architecture of people experience design the necessary evolution to solve modern workplace disengagement?
Or does this highly complex design-heavy framework risk over-engineering the workplace entirely? Does it, obscure the foundational, deeply human cultural realities that are actually required for well-being?
My position today is that proactive experience design is the definitive, required capability for organizational performance. We have to stop passively measuring how people feel and start, actively architecting the environment they work in.
And my perspective is that this intricate design architecture introduces perilous complexities into the workplace. And honestly, no amount of clever journey mapping can substitute for foundational cultural imperatives.
So to really understand this shift, I think we have to start by acknowledging a painful truth. Traditional employee engagement is fundamentally flawed because, it's a trailing indicator.
Yeah, like an annual engagement survey.
Exactly. Think about it. By the time HR compiles the data, analyzes the sentiment, and presents it to the board, it is the equivalent of an autopsy.
An autopsy. Right.
Right. It identifies the cause of dissatisfaction long after the employee has mentally checked out, usually when the opportunity for any meaningful intervention has completely passed.
Well, I don't disagree with the autopsy analogy. Measuring a corpse doesn't bring it back to life, but we have to look at what is being proposed as the alternative here.
Well, the alternative is rooted in Pine and Gilmore's foundational work on the experience economy. In the consumer world, organizations compete on the quality of the experiences they create.
Sure, like walking into an Apple store or a Disney park.
Exactly. Every micro moment is designed. We accept this immediately in customer service, but we have been painfully slow to apply it internally to our own people. We must transition to what the research calls prospective architecture.
Wait, hold on. Before we get it lost in the academic jargon, let's translate prospective architecture for our listeners. You're essentially saying we need to stop counting the potholes after a tire pops and start actively paving a smoother road before the car even gets there.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. And the business case for paving that road is staggering. According to research from IBM and WorkHuman highlighted in the text, top quartile experience organizations.
The ones actually designing these environments, you mean?
Yes, the ones actually designing them. They show 4.2 times higher profit and 2.1 times higher revenue growth than their bottom quartile peers.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd add there is hesitation about the sheer scale of implementing this. I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Experience design isn't about adding bureaucratic administrative overhead. It is about the active curation of moments rather than the passive, retroactive monitoring of moods.
Well, I come at it from a different way. I completely agree that the annual engagement survey is an outdated, insufficient ritual. It's a snapshot of a moving target.
Right.
But let's look at the actual mechanics of this prospective architecture. Dr. Westover's research outlines a sprawling apparatus: personas, journey mapping, continuous sentiment analysis, AI personalization. I mean, this risks becoming an over-engineered abstraction.
But is it really an abstraction if it's changing the day-to-day?
Tactical experience improvements layered on top of toxic cultures yield very limited impact. You can design a perfectly frictionless, gamified onboarding app, but if the actual team culture the employee is entering is cutthroat and psychologically unsafe, that app means absolutely nothing.
But you are assuming the app and the culture are totally disconnected. Good design shapes behavior.
It can, but the solutions proposed demand incredibly rare T-shaped HR capabilities. The text specifically calls this out. We are asking HR professionals to have deep, specialized knowledge in behavioral science while also maintaining broad skills across data analytics, IT integration, and service design.
They're a new kind of professional, yes.
But those unicorns are incredibly rare, especially for a mid-market company. Furthermore, the constant listening infrastructure required to fuel this, the AI nudges, the continuous feedback loops, it risks triggering severe survey fatigue. We are trying to mechanically design fundamental human needs like psychological safety and purpose.
I think we're looking at this too.
I fear we are just replacing the flawed passive measurement system with an incredibly burdensome, hyper-complex architectural one.
Okay, let's move away from the abstract risk for a moment and look at the psychological mechanics of how this actually functions. One of the core tenets of experience design is journey mapping, specifically leveraging the peak-end rule from behavioral economics.
Now, Daniel Kahneman's work. The idea that human beings don't objectively evaluate an experience by averaging every minute of it.
Exactly. Evolutionarily, our brains don't have the capacity to store every single second of an experience. Instead, we take emotional snapshots. We judge an overall experience disproportionately by its most intense moment, the peak, and its final moment, the end.
Right.
This isn't just theory. It is a neurological reality. The research highlights how Intuit applied this to their hiring experience for software engineers. Instead of just looking at the overall hiring survey score, they mapped the emotional arc of the candidate.
Okay, and what did they find?
They found that candidates were experiencing intense, prolonged anxiety during the gap between the final interview and the actual offer decision. Cortisol levels were spiking.
Well, sure, because uncertainty is inherently threatening to the human brain.
Right. So, Intuit proactively redesigned that specific gap. They didn't overhaul their entire corporate culture. They just introduced transparent timelines and regular interim communication. By actively managing that specific emotional peak, they reduced offer declines by 23%.
Wow, 23%.
Yeah. And MasterCard did something similar. They realized the first 90 days were the critical peak moment for long-term retention. They didn't just hope the manager was nice.
Which is usually what happens, unfortunately.
Exactly. They curated that specific 90-day window with relationship-building accelerators and tailored learning modules. The result was a 15 percentage point improvement in 12-month retention. That is the power of understanding human psychology and mapping critical incidents.
Okay, the Intuit and MasterCard examples are impressive. I'll grant you that. But they are operational fixes. They are smoothing out process friction.
Process friction that matters, though.
Sure, but contrast that with the Patagonia example from the text. Patagonia's phenomenal retention and employee dedication isn't derived from a clever process map or a perfectly timed interim email during the hiring phase. It is rooted in a deep, foundational culture of environmental purpose and activism.
But Patagonia still has an onboarding process. They still have mechanisms in place.
Yes, but look at what it entails. New employees participate in actual environmental projects during onboarding. They get their hands in the dirt. That isn't just a meticulously curated moment cooked up by a service designer.
Well,
It is a visceral, authentic connection to the company's fundamental reason for existing. Without that genuine, underlying meaning, mapping critical incidents is merely a sterile process exercise.
I don't think it's sterile if it reduces anxiety.
You can map a journey perfectly. You can remove every ounce of friction. But if the destination is a workplace devoid of purpose, the journey map won't save you. You are just optimizing the commute to a job the employee still finds entirely meaningless.
I appreciate the depth of the Patagonia example, I really do. But I think we are creating a false dichotomy here between process and purpose. Let me offer an analogy to clarify how experience design operates alongside culture. Think of broad organizational culture as the weather and experience design as building a house.
Okay, I'm listening.
We cannot instantly change the weather. Organizational culture takes years to shift. It is complex, atmospheric, deeply entrenched, and, highly dependent on thousands of variables.
Agreed.
But we can systematically, immediately design a house, a set of structured experiences, workflows, and tools that protects employees from the elements right now. You don't wait for the rain to stop before building a roof. When Salesforce redesigned its onboarding experience using journey mapping and iterative prototyping, they didn't have to overhaul their entire corporate soul. They simply looked at the friction in the integration process and engineered it out.
And what was the impact of that?
That architectural improvement alone generated an estimated $50 million in annual savings from reduced recruiting and training costs. Process design provides immediate shelter even while the larger cultural weather is slowly changing.
That is a very elegant analogy, I admit, but a house built with toxic materials will still make you sick no matter how beautifully the roof is designed.
Well, I wouldn't say the materials are toxic.
But if we look at how these journeys are delivered at scale, the materials of your house get highly complex and potentially alienating. The research relies heavily on technological customization through employee personas and artificial intelligence. Building a bespoke house for a team of 10 is one thing. What happens when you try to scale that architecture globally?
That is exactly where the personas and the technology become indispensable. Look at Unilever. They have a workforce of over 150,000 people.
Right?
I know our listeners at mid-market companies might hear that number and tune out, but the principle scales down perfectly. You cannot apply a one-size-fits-all HR model to a diverse population. Unilever developed detailed personas to understand that an early career employee in an emerging market is heavily prioritizing aggressive skills development and global exposure.
Makes sense.
Or take Schneider Electric. They built an integrated digital experience layer for 135,000 employees across 100 countries. By prioritizing user needs over system capabilities, they reduced system navigation time by 35 minutes per employee per week.
35 minutes?
Yes, 35 minutes. Think about what 35 minutes of pure frustration does to a person's psyche over a week. Removing that is an abstraction. It is millions of hours redirected toward actual value creation and deep work. That is removing systemic friction through smart customization.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. The moment you introduce this level of hyper-customization, particularly when it is powered by AI algorithms, you introduce severe, systemic risks that the text itself explicitly warns about.
Risks that can be managed, though.
But are often ignored in the rush for efficiency. AI algorithms are fundamentally historical. They learn by looking at vast amounts of past data. This means they are incredibly efficient at recognizing past patterns of success.
Right, which helps identify top talent pathways.
But if yesterday's successful managers all looked a certain way or communicated a certain way, the algorithm mathematically repeats that pattern. It surfaces opportunities to similar profiles under the shiny, progressive label of personalization. It is a technical flaw that amplifies historical friction rather than removing it.
Which is exactly why human oversight is built into human-centered design.
But the automation itself strips essential human connection from the moments that require it most. Chatbots cannot handle the emotional complexity of an employee navigating a health crisis or a messy workplace conflict.
Well, they aren't meant to handle the highly emotional.
When the system forces them through a decision tree instead of connecting them to a human, it alienates them completely. And there is a broader philosophical risk here, too. Think about how Netflix algorithms work. We all have completely different homepages based on our viewing habits.
Right, personalized content.
Yeah, but if every single employee has a hyper-personalized, algorithmically curated reality in the workplace, you fragment the workforce's identity. If we don't share the same systems, the same challenges, or the same interfaces, you erode collective belonging. You are replacing a community with a collection of individualized, AI-managed silos.
You are assuming the AI is making decisions in a vacuum, which is a fundamental misunderstanding of how human-centered design implements technology.
How so?
Think of predictive analytics not as an autopilot system that is flying the plane while the pilot sleeps, but as a ship's early warning radar.
Okay.
The radar doesn't steer the ship. It alerts the captain to an iceberg miles before it's visible to the naked eye. When an intelligent matching algorithm surfaces a learning or career opportunity to an employee, it is proactively offering agency before that employee feels stagnant.
I see the intention there.
But it pings them before they get bored and start doom scrolling on LinkedIn. Are you really suggesting we reject a tool that supports employee agency and prevents stagnation simply because it requires careful implementation?
I am suggesting that the implementation is so vastly complex that the human beings tasked with executing it will collapse under the weight of it. Who is the captain reading this early warning radar?
The manager.
Exactly. It is the frontline manager. That's a compelling argument, but have you considered the literally impossible expectations we are placing on the manager?
The manager is central to this, yes.
The text explicitly states that managers are the primary architects of this employee experience. Let's look at their day-to-day reality. They are already balancing operational demands, hitting quarterly targets, navigating ambiguous strategic priorities, and, absorbing all the organizational stress from above.
Which is a lot, admittedly.
It's massive. And now you are telling me they must also act as bespoke experience designers for each individual on their team? Establishing the necessary governance for this is monumental. The text mentions Microsoft's centralized experience quality standards, where HR initiatives must pass rigorous design criteria.
Which ensures quality.
Yes, but that level of governance is completely beyond the capacity of 95% of companies. If you pile experience design duties onto managers without systematically removing administrative tasks, you don't get a beautiful, curated employee experience. You get profound manager burnout. And that burnout ripples through the team and degrades the experience for everyone.
But your entire argument relies on the assumption that experience design is an additive burden. You are looking at it as one more thing to do. The empirical evidence shows that experience design, when executed properly, actually alleviates the manager's burden.
I'm skeptical, but go on.
It is about right-sizing the role. Let's look at the Cisco example from the text. When Cisco redesigned their manager experience, they didn't just give managers a new set of responsibilities. They recognized through journey mapping that administrative burden was actively crowding out high-value coaching.
Okay.
So they implemented AI-powered administrative assistants specifically to handle routine approvals, scheduling, and low-tier inquiries. By designing the friction out of the system, managers reported having 40% more time for high-value team interactions. It significantly reduced feelings of overwhelm.
Well, sure, because Cisco has the resources to build AI assistants.
But the principle holds regardless of company size. Furthermore, intentional experience design is exactly how we fix the systemic biases you were worried about a moment ago.
How? By automating more?
No, by being intentional. Consider Accenture's inclusive equity design for parental leave. They realized their completely neutral policy was predominantly being used by mothers. The neutral system was perpetuating career disparities.
Right.
So, by redesigning the experience intentionally, training managers on bias, creating return-to-work support, establishing peer communities specifically for fathers. They increased fathers' uptake of parental leave by 300%.
Wow, 300%.
Yes, that doesn't happen by just hoping the culture organically gets better or relying on good intentions. It happens by designing the physical system to enforce equity.
Okay, I can see that the Accenture example is a powerful demonstration of intentionality changing behavior. But we have to be honest here, it also required a massive centralized push and immense corporate resources.
It took effort, certainly.
Right. My concern remains that for the vast majority of organizations out there, this intense focus on the mechanics of the experience, the journey maps, the digital layers, the AI radar systems, will serve as a fatal distraction from the fundamental requirement of building trust.
I don't see it as a distraction.
But it can be. A slick digital interface that saves an employee 35 minutes a week cannot and will not compensate for a manager who does not genuinely care about your career trajectory or a corporate mission that feels fundamentally hollow.
To borrow one last analogy, experience design principles mandate putting the airplane oxygen mask on the manager first. If we design systems that simplify their administrative workflows and provide them with clear decision rights, we actually give them the breathing room to cultivate that deep trust and purpose you are rightfully advocating for. We aren't choosing between architecture and culture. We are using architecture to give culture a safe place to thrive.
And I would argue that if the foundation of the house is built on a fault line of mistrust or lack of purpose, the architectural brilliance of the oxygen mask delivery system just won't matter when the ground shakes.
Which brings us to a natural point to summarize our positions. My stance today has been that the shift from employee engagement to people experience is not just a semantic game for HR professionals. It is a rigorous, proactive architectural requirement.
Right.
As we navigate the complexities of hybrid work and the fierce fight to retain critical talent, we can no longer rely on trailing indicators that tell us what went wrong yesterday. We must systematically design the moments, workflows, and technologies that allow employees to perform at their absolute best today.
And my position remains that while the shift away from trailing indicators, like the annual survey, is absolutely valid and necessary, tactical design mechanisms simply cannot substitute for foundational cultural trust.
Which is a fair warning.
The risks of technological alienation, hyper-fragmented workplaces, and profound manager burnout demand intense scrutiny. We must be incredibly careful that in our rush to engineer the perfect, frictionless workplace, we do not obscure the deeply human elements of meaning and belonging that simply cannot be plotted on a journey map.
I think we have found a very strong point of convergence in our mutual agreement that traditional annual engagement surveys are fundamentally inadequate for capturing whole-person well-being. They truly are a relic of a different era of work.
We certainly agree on that. Measuring a corpse helps no one. Where we continue to disagree is whether this highly complex design architecture, with its AI, personas, and constant mapping, is the ultimate solution or a potential distraction from deeper, more difficult organizational meaning.
Contemplating both the mechanics of design and the depth of culture truly illuminates the staggering complexity of the modern workplace. We highly suggest our listeners delve into Dr. Westervo's source material to explore how these human-centered design principles might apply to the unique realities at their own organizations, whether they're a team of 50 or 50,000.
There is certainly much more to unpack regarding how we balance the drive for productivity with the fundamental need for humanity.
Returning to our sports car, we know the old dashboard is broken. The question that remains for you to decide is whether we need to completely rewire the diagnostic system or if we need to get out of the car, look under the hood, and fundamentally rebuild the engine.